And good afternoon, everybody. My name is Steve Heretic, and I, like so many here, was a long friend of Mark's. And I am delighted in some ways, but deeply sad in others, to be standing here today. I'm pleased to welcome all of you to join with Sally and the family to say goodbye to somebody who has meant so much to all of us, as a dad, as a partner, as a friend, as a neighbor, as someone who served his community amazingly well. In trying to put some thoughts together today, and I can start out by saying I'm not a minister, and those of you who know me would laugh at the very thought of this. But in trying to put together some thoughts today about Mark, the one word that kept coming back to me in my mind in the years that I've known he and Sally and the kids is service. You know, Mark has given so much of himself to so many people for so long that I think that most of us here know him somehow in that context. We have a number of folks here who have been longstanding friends of Mark. Some of you have been in the professional trenches with him. Two of the three musketeers are here, and many of you have come a very long way to basically say goodbye and to say hello to the family and to catch up. There will be nothing formal about the service. This is basically for all of us as friends, as family, to come together, to be with each other for an hour or so, and to talk about a guy that really meant a lot to us. We do have a number of folks who have agreed, perhaps reluctantly, to speak, but then we'd like to open it up to all of you, because I think just about everybody in this room, however well we knew him and in what context we knew him, have our stories, have the things we would like to remember, and more importantly, have things we'd like to share with Sally and the kids. So we'll have the opportunity to do that. To begin, I would like to call on Kathy Grieve. Kathy, where are you? Come on up. And Kathy was the director of sales, worked with Mark at the opening of the Renaissance here in Portsmouth, and we're happy to have her back today.
Okay, I wasn't expecting to go first. I'm really blessed, not only in just knowing Mark, but being able to be with him, one of the ones at the very end. And I don't know if it was luck or God saying, okay, this is something I'm giving you, because it's something I'll cherish for the rest of my life. Sitting there with Sally and Mark for those, God, it was 2 hours? That Wednesday night. And he was so alive and so Mark. The F-bombs were flying between us, and the stories, and just catching up on everybody. And at the end he said, "We're not going to cry." And I said, "No, we're not. We've cried a lot over the years and we've laughed a lot." And so I thank God for that. But I've known Mark a long time. I met him when I was 23 years old, starting off at the Omni Waterside Hotel, and I was just a little peon, and he was Mark DiVenuti, in charge of catering and convention services. And I think we connected then because I was the function book coordinator, and he came in and expected to write in the function books. And I was told only I wrote in the function books. And of course, there I am, 23 years old, and there's Mark telling me that he's going to write in it. And I stood my ground and said, "No, only I can write in the function book. You can put your papers right there, and I'll put them in for you, and that's the way it is." And I got that look. You know, the eyes. But I stood my ground, and he stomped off like he does. And I think he respected me at that time because I didn't back down to him, and that was the beginning of our relationship. And a great relationship. I became, I think, what we called his work wife. I got him during the day and then sent him home to Sally at night, and I don't know which one of us had it worse sometimes. But I've spent the last 2 weeks trying to figure out what I'd want to say, because I don't want to get up here and ramble. And so I thought, I'm going to talk about what Mark taught me, because I think it's what he taught a lot of us. Well, one, this isn't everybody else, but he taught me that brown is not a good color for me. I walked in one day in this great brown vintage jacket, and he just all day long was on me, and I kept saying, but it's vintage, and he kept saying no. So honestly, seriously, I've not worn brown, and that's been 15 years. That Diet Coke and M&Ms are essential to the workplace. Never let the clients hear your frustrations. Make sure the phone is hung up before you start screaming and saying what an effing idiot the person or the bride is. Lamps and soft lighting are much better in an office than the overhead. Men can wear colored shirts every day. I don't think I ever, maybe once, saw Mark in a white shirt. I mean, he made a pink shirt look hot. Blank the cash cow. I'm trying not to curse here, and that's hard for me because I grew up working with Mark, so I curse like a sailor, and that's also what I learned from him. But with the whole cash cow, it's when we were opening the Renaissance, and we were sitting there in a meeting with corporate, and we were complaining about the Marriott across the river, and the regional guy, Tim, said, you know, if it ever comes between a decision between the Renaissance and the cash cow will always win. Well, of course, it was after that, F the cash cow, and Mark brought in a little Chick-fil-A cow that took a beating for the next 2 years as we threw it across the office and just beat the hell out of that cow. But what that taught me was, you know, never be afraid of the big dog. Even if you're the little one, never be afraid of the competition. It's okay to be angry. It shows your passion and that you care enough. And my God, Mark DiVenuti could get angrier than anybody I ever saw over stained linen, anything. And when he got mad, watch out. But it was okay because he was so passionate about it. He cared, and he embodied that passion, and he brought it to all of us and made us want to be better because we saw how much he cared. He taught me that everybody needs praise and a pat on the back, no matter how great they are. And I saw that with Mark. I'd always know when Mark needed that pat on the back, because Mark was great. I mean, I put him up against anybody. But Mark also needed to know that he was great. So he needed that sometimes, and we all do. Never let them see your fear. They'll respect you for standing up to them, and I learned that at age 23 with Mark. I also learned Mark was never going to learn to master the computer. He was the king of the legal pad, doing his BEOs at 5 a.m. and bringing them in for Cecilia to type. And I pretty much knew when we went to CITY, Mark wasn't going to be there much longer, and he wasn't. And the one thing I never was able to master that Mark could was how Mark, I know this sounds bad, but I don't care, how Mark could make an idiot wonder if Mark was making him look like an idiot. I remember the Renaissance when we were opening it. There was a lot of construction guys, and I was in my dating phase, and one of them came up and was in the office looking for me, and he stood there, and Mark was there, and he said to Mark, he said, well, you know, I'm looking for Kathy Grant's office. And Mark just gave him that look, those eyes, you know, looking down at him, and said, well, I assume it's the one with her name on the door. And and the guy's like, oh, okay, I guess he's not here. And he ran out, and Mark told me the story later laughing. And he's like, you're not really going to go out with that idiot, are you? And I'm like, well, I might. And so I did, and the guy said to me, he goes, yeah, he goes, I asked Mark, and he told me what he said about the name tag. He goes, yeah, I don't know if he's trying to, like, tell me I was an idiot or not. And I said, yeah, he was. But I love that about Mark, because we both felt the same way about idiots. So, but what he taught me or shared with me, and I don't know if you can teach this, but passion, and having the passion, and letting it rule you and let it come through in what you do. And especially, I mean, most of us in this room, I would say the majority of us, are in the hospitality industry, and it shows when you care, and you're the best when you care like that, and the clients see it and the brides feel it. And he was just passionate about everything, and he could make the rest of us really mad, and he could make operations, God bless them, like Barbie back there, I mean, really mad because Mark's just throwing shit and coming into a room and pulling linens off and scaring the hell out of those little banquet servers. And then Mark would turn around and look at you and wink. So the banquet server didn't really know that, Mark was just, ha, ha, ha. But he expected it to be right, and we should all have those expectations. He taught me about love, and that's because I saw him, and when you work with someone that close every single day, you know so much about them. So I knew how much he loved Sally, and I was always jealous of how Sally had someone who so respected her, because it's hard in this industry, or any industry really, it's hard when you're a strong woman to have a man who can stand there for you and be proud and stand by your side and let you go out and do the things you need to do and not be afraid of that. And Mark never was. He was so proud of Sally. He would brag about her all the time to all of us. I mean, and it was great. It wasn't, you never got tired of it. We always knew what Sally was doing. We knew where Sally was, He was so proud of the fact that she could smoke cigars out there with her clients and just, do it all. And I thought, damn, I want that. I want that someday to have that man who is like Mark and is that strong to be able to support a woman like that. Because, I'm sorry, men, but there's not that many Marks out there that are that strong to support a strong woman. And I was just always jealous, but so happy that I had a friend who was that way. And he taught me about relationships, that it's two ways. It's not one way. And if it's one way, then it's not a relationship, and you should get out of it very quickly. One with the support that he had for Sally and the support that Sally had for him. Mark would leave some jobs. And how he came home to Sally and Sally didn't kill him a few times, I don't know. The last time he and I worked together, he left me, and I was sitting on a table at Patient First, and we knew it was coming to this, but I had this horrible ear infection, and I'm sitting there on the table, and Mark's on the phone with me saying, I've had it, I'm done, I'm leaving, blank, 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 blank. And I'm like, no, just wait till I get back. I'll be there in 20 minutes, just wait. And he's like, okay. Well, 15 minutes later, I can't handle it, I'm leaving. And I'm yelling, effing blank, don't, and I get back, and the keys are on the desk, and he's gone, and I didn't talk to him for a month. I was so mad at him, and which Sally said, thank you for being that mad at him, because, he needed that. But I knew what Mark needed to do, and Mark was Mark, and when he's done, he is done. And there was no going back. But Sally, they worked around it, and Sally was there for him in those times. And I brought Mark to the Renaissance the first time. I knew when we opened and we were looking for a director of catering, I wanted the best and I wanted someone special, and I knew it was Mark. And then Mark brought Barbie, and Mark brought Chef John, and it was such an incredible team. And then when he was back at the Renaissance and Remington came in, he called me, and I was in Indiana in the middle of a horrific job, and he said, come home. I need you here, come home. And I'm like, okay, I'm on my way. And we worked together again, and that was probably, it was just an incredible time until he quit. But he taught me that, relationships it's two ways. It's being there for each other, and in the good and the bad, and we had plenty of those. But, so here's what I miss about Mark. I miss Mark's laugh. Mark had the loudest, strongest laugh. It was like, I miss Mark making me laugh because that man could bring me to tears laughing. I miss Mark's eyes going narrow when you just knew it was coming. I miss Mark stomping off mad and then coming back in the next day going, okay, I don't agree with what you did, but I'm going to live with it, and okay. And I'd be like, okay. And he'd expect me to, be more like, oh, okay, thanks, Mark. And I'm like, no. Because he stomped off mad quite a few times. I miss Mark scaring the banquet servers. I mean, I'm sorry if you're a banquet server here and he scared you, but there was just nothing more than seeing Mark come into that room and everybody just in terror. I miss Mark inspecting the plates in the kitchen. I miss Mark's advice on life because I've been through a lot with him, and his advice was always very sound, and he guided me through, literally half of my life. I'm 48, and I met him when I was 23, so the man got me to where I am today. And I just miss my friend who cared about me. And I think he would miss me too, I hope. And I think that's the kind of friendship that's the best friendship to have, when you miss someone so much and you know that they miss you too. And I was moving a month or two ago and I was unpacking, and I found this book and I thought, oh, I never look at that, that's going out. And then I opened it up because I remembered Mark gave me this book, and it's called The Simple Abundance Journal of Gratitude. And I was going through my first divorce, and it was a hard time, and so Mark gave me this book, and he said, you just need to remember to be grateful for things. And it's where you log in grateful. Well, I only logged in like 12 things, but I had opened it up, and last night I pulled it out, because out of like the 12 things, Mark's in 3 of them. On January 3rd, I wrote, I'm grateful for the beauty of snow, and Mark's 4-wheel drive. So obviously Mark came to pick me up. On January 4th, I wrote, I'm grateful for my friends Tina and Mark and their support. And then I skipped a week or two. January 9th, actually this is pretty cool because some of y'all remember this. I'm grateful for being able to get dressed up and wear beautiful dresses to balls, which was the Toady Ball, which we all went to, and we had a great time that night. And then on January 6th, I'm grateful for TJ Maxx, squirrels, birds, and rabbits. I'm grateful for my old friend Mark and my new friend Meg. And I thought, wow, I only wrote in this like 12 times, and Mark's in 3 of them. So I'm pretty damn grateful for Mark because he was my friend. So this was in the book. Only when we are no longer afraid do we begin to live in every experience, painful or joyous, to live in gratitude for every moment, to live abundantly. And I thought that summed up with our Mark. I'm grateful to have him as my friend that I could call on all the time for the little things on who to get to the plumber, who to bitch about, who to hire, who to just be there for the advice to say, okay, I messed up again, Mark, what do you think? And he's like, you didn't mess up, it's life. And he'd steer me back on my way. And I told him, I told Rob this earlier, I'm not a crier. I cry when I get really angry. But I've cried this last 2 weeks. And I don't know if it's because I'm so angry or I'm sad, but I'm just angry that he's gone. And I know I got to move past that, and I will, but I'll always miss Mark, and it doesn't seem real. But thank you, Sally, for letting me share Mark all those years, and I'm sorry when I sent him home. So mad. But obviously you were right on target because he came back happy the next day and okay. And so I'm not going to babble anymore, but thank you for letting me speak and share. And I hope Mark's up there listening. I think he knows how much I loved him. but I think he'd be so happy to see everybody here, because Mark loved his friends, and that's all he talked about that last night that I saw him. We talked about everybody, and how much he loved everybody and how much he cared about them. So that was his main thing, is he wanted to be able to say goodbye. So I think he's with us saying goodbye today.
I'm Italian, and I do cry. So it's allowed in the Italian culture. But I will try to read this without doing that. So Kathy, thanks for being so strong up here. That's a good lead. I also was supposed to go after Rob, so you know, because Rob read his story to me. And I told him that I was going to say, when I got up here, everything he said, ditto, and get down. So that said, Rob's speech is better than mine, but I will read it. I have to say that Mark was my friend and coworker that I've missed working with for the past 5 years. Now I will miss him more. For whatever reasons, Mark, Rob Sanders, and I not only worked very well together as a team, we became fast friends, and the kind of friends that you have when you can go for months with only quick check-ins on the phone, driving home, picking up where you left off, and when you finally get face-to-face again, the friendship is still there. With Mark and Sally's family life, there was always a lot of catching up. When are you going to retire? What does Sally say about that? I thought Sally wanted to retire first. That didn't seem to happen, though, did it? And then catching up on what the kids were doing, Jessica, Angel, Matt, Michael, Mark, and Austin. And by the way, we had a chance to catch up with Austin last night, and that was great. So take care of your mom, okay? He promised he would. You need to know that your dad cared deeply about you, all of you, and only wanted the best for the family that he and Sally had put together. I know that one of the best things you can do going forward is to pull together as that family and keep in mind what Dad would say if he were still around. Matthew. Sally asked me to tell a funny story about Mark, and the one thing that sticks in my mind the most is when Mark came to my office one day to tell me that he was going to book an aircraft carrier Christmas party for about 2,500 to 3,000 people. I was relatively new to Portsmouth, and I looked at him, "You're out of your mind. We can fit 800 people in the ballroom, that's it." No. He was so excited about this, I've got to tell you. I looked at him like he was crazy because the Renaissance Ballroom held 800 people. He then proceeded to tell me how we could pull it off with some out-of-the-box planning. He then told me his plans were to use both floors and every inch of banquet space at the hotel with different themed rooms, bands, DJs, dessert rooms, food and beverage stations, all over. He was so excited about this, I can still picture him doing it in his pink shirt and his suit and his cufflinks. Oh, unbelievable. All over, Mark was a true foodie, as we say, and his excitement about how cool it would be convinced me it would work. I couldn't argue with him. It did work, and he kept booking those parties. And I think after I left, he took those parties from the Renaissance to Newport News, didn't he, Allison? Yes. So good for him, good for him. But anyway, okay. Mark also was so creative, and his positive attitude helped him work with both clients with limited budgets and those that wanted an event. And those were the things that made Mark, you could see the glimmer in his eyes. He liked those parties better. The smile in his eyes was easy to read when he booked a party that he could be creative with. I'm sure he made those clients get their money's worth. I know he did. Mark always worked well with the entire team, from the chef and kitchen team to the banquet staff. Mark's events were orchestrated by a pro. He was respected by all, and as Kathy said, I'm sure feared by some. But it's funny because I never saw some of the stuff that I heard about it. He was always on great behavior when I was on the floor. So Mark knew how to pull off an event. He knew what would work, and he knew what would make the client happy. When Mark called me to tell me he had a sarcoma, I listened to what he had told me for his treatment plan, and I was concerned about what lay ahead for him. We both knew he'd get through this rough patch, and we'd be meeting in South Carolina sometime soon. Mark and Sally and Melissa and I talked often about retiring in South Carolina one day. It doesn't look like that's going to work out, but Mark's positivity from the time I have known him to the end will stay with me for the rest of my life. I will do my best to keep his outlook on life. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Andy. And now the other of the three musketeers, Rob.
I have to say that, in listening to Kathy speak, I identified with a lot of that, and maybe some stories that I forgot or took for granted that it happened. But, the last couple weeks have just been, really hard for me. And so trying to figure out what to say today has just been draining and difficult, and probably one of the toughest and most difficult things I've ever had to do. But what I realized is it's nearly impossible to fully describe the friendship that I had with him. On June 18th, we lost a dear friend to cancer, and from his first diagnosis, Mark had approached each challenge with optimism, determination, and often saying, "What's next, and let's get it fixed." I know it was difficult for him to truly convey how he was feeling or let us know about the uncertainty of his course of treatment, but he knew he wasn't dealing with this alone. We were all supportive and offering our love, prayers, advice, and guidance. Over the last 8 months, I had the opportunity to chat with Mark or see him weekly. More often than not, our conversations were completely random, and to be honest, a lot of fun. We didn't dwell on the cancer, but to be honest, we just tried to live life, and I had hoped to change his focus away from the IV drips, the appointments, the pills, and his pain. A short while ago, we were having breakfast at OBC Hospital during one of his treatment weekends, and he was tired, and you can tell he was in some pain. And now looking back, it was clear that the cancer was taking a toll on his body. I remember his eagerness to report progress. However, I was really amazed that he didn't complain or mention how sore or how much discomfort he was in. I guess that was Mark. I can honestly tell you that although he had some down times, he really never felt sorry for himself. He never asked why he was being put through such an ordeal. He really just looked at what's next and how to fix it. So, like Kathy and Andy, I spent a lot of time thinking, over the last couple weeks about what I was going to say. And, it was funny, as random as our conversations were, there were some random thoughts that had popped into my head. So I remember not long after his first diagnosis and subsequent appointments with the physicians, he called, and before he could really say anything, he was chuckling on the phone, and he said, "I finally got a tattoo." And I replied, "Thank God you got my name emblazoned across your chest." And I said, "You got flames and eagle's wings, right?" And I said, "Oh, wait a second. Did you get one of those tattoos on the lower part of your back?" You see, this is how we were cutting up and making light and having a little fun. I know it had to be difficult seeing the radiologists and letting them mark their treatment plan all over his body. But for Mark, this was just the next step, and he was eager to get started. Mark was a good listener, a voice of reason, and a straight talker. Okay, well, he was a little stubborn, and he could be a pain in the ass. But he was always selfless and caring, and he was one of my best friends. He excelled at creating experiences and relationships, whether in his hospitality or educational careers. The bonds he formed with his coworkers, his clients, his students, and friends were lasting. All of you are here today as proof of that. He was a patient teacher, a trusted mentor to many of us, and he challenged those around him with humor and a passion for hospitality. While steadfast in his beliefs, he was never afraid to concede a point or offer help when needed, or assume responsibility, or make you feel like you were the most important person. And to be honest, I think that's why his personality blended so well with all of ours. Mark's interests were varied, but I think you'll agree he loved spending time with friends, whether it was drinks after work, reminiscing on his porch, cutting up about fun times. He was a big part of our lives and the creator of special moments. So, in his style, I think it's only fitting to say that this truly is a celebration of Mark's life and the time he spent with each of us. Let us be proud that he's left us with a wonderful family and a trusted friend, Sally, and thousands of amazing memories. He will truly be missed, but we need to remember it's easy to make friends, but old friends are years in the making. Thanks. Thank you.
For anyone who has spent more than 2 minutes in Port Norfolk, you will know that the Divenuti clan are a major presence on Mount Vernon Avenue. And one of the neighbors who has been a tremendous help for the family and for Mark during these last days is their neighbor, Linda Rafferty. Linda, where are you? Not here? Here she is. Please.
I'm Italian and I cry. I wrote a poem for Mark. It is with a heavy heart that I stand here today, but there are several thoughts I want to convey. This is to you and for you, Mark. Dave and I moved to Port Norfolk in 2010, and upon meeting you, we realized we were living next door to one of the remarkable men. It is no accident that Mark is the second and stressed syllable in the word remarkable. I cannot claim to profess that I know the degree of devotion and selflessness that you showed your children and your wife, all of your way to brief life. However, I know enough from observation to speak to your love, commitment, and dedication. Mark, as a husband, what we have seen in you as a husband is a man who not only forever loved his wife, but who truly treasured and enjoyed each moment with her in his life. Morning coffee and reading the paper in a comfy front porch chair, along with warm conversation about moments and memories, there was happiness in the air. You demonstrated how powerful, you built a life with your best friend, Sally, and you demonstrated how powerful lifelong love can be. It was obvious to us that for Sally, you were always there, supportive and helpful in the happy marriage you did share. You celebrated the triumphs and faced the challenges together, whenever life delivered pleasant or stormy weather. Mark, as a father, we saw in you a man who deeply and unconditionally loved his 6 children. You provided a solid foundation, along with helping them to develop on his character formation. You guided, believed, listened, encouraged, sacrificed, taught, and inspired, even on days and nights that you were tired. You helped them to overcome obstacles and required that they show respect for others, and made them appreciate the value of having a family, which included many sisters and brothers. Reading the Daily Break on Father's Day, I enjoyed reading Channeling Dad and what readers had to say about their favorite TV dad. The favorite for me was the reader who selected James Evans of Good Times, as it reminded me of you, Mark, and my own ditty. I'd like to share an excerpt from what the reader expressed. A father is a provider for his family, a protector, and someone who at times has to dispense the truth, even when it is unpopular. He can be loving without being overly sentimental, tough with glimmers of humor and kindness, imperfect yet perfect in his attempts to keep his family together. He takes on the role of disciplinarian, but has the courage to admit when he is wrong. He motivates his children to dream big and sees the unique qualities each of them possesses. Mark is a member of our community. Your love for Port Norfolk was evident, not only in your continual and active participation in numerous events, but in serving as recording secretary and past Civic League president. Mark is a neighbor, but most importantly, a friend. We found in you a person always a helping hand willing to lend. You were friendly, outgoing, and emotionally generous, always to us. You never failed to smile, wave, and say hello. You were that kind of cordial fellow. Southern hospitality at its finest. You loved to porch or over-the-fence talk, and there was never a time into your yard I did walk that you didn't invite me to come and sit. You would inquire about our boys or share stories and experiences with your incredible wit. 5 short years was not nearly long enough of having the pleasure of being your neighbor. Mark as a person. You are a man of strong convictions, but a tender heart, a transplanted Southern gentleman from the start. A man who displayed integrity, charisma, kindness, humor, knowledge, resourcefulness, and thoughtfulness, to name a few. You made sure your family was safe and loved. You loved life, and you gave special meaning to and touched so many people's lives in different ways. You taught us all the meaning of positivity, hope, courage, determination, and strength. As always, you gave it your all. You fought the good fight to the end. Mark, we miss, but will always remember you, our dear, dear friend.
And thank you, Linda. Kim Schultz, did you make it? Come on. Kim was Mark's first roommate when he first moved to Virginia. I think you were held up in an airport for a time, but you've made it, and we're good to see you, please.
Sorry I'm late. I was late getting here, but I did my best to get here on time. Sally asked me just to mention a few things about Mark and their relationship and Mark's and my friendship. I start out saying, where do I start? Because Mark and I had a lot of experiences together, a lot of fun together. And I said, I start by talking about Mark in the present tense because he'll always and forever be with us in our hearts. And I'm not telling you anything you don't know if I say Mark is wicked funny. And who doesn't want to hang around a guy like that? I was fortunate enough to work with Mark at Omni, like several of us have here. And it was in the 80s, and Mark needed somewhere to live. He needed an apartment. I had a spare bedroom. I was a block off the bay, which was a lot of fun at that time. And so we thought it might be a good idea if he became my roommate. It was in the 80s, and I was in my 20s, so it gives you an idea how old I am now. But my parents were very opposed to me having a male roommate. And I told them, just think about it. He's a nice guy. We work together. And come and meet him. And they met Mark. They didn't come willingly, but they came and met Mark. And after they met him, they said, I see why you like him so much and why you think this would be a good fit. And they actually fell in love with Mark like the rest of us did. And later on, they said how comforted they were that he was there as my roommate because they felt someone was looking out for me. He was an excellent roommate. We had a tiny little duplex, 2 bedrooms and 1 bath. But Mark was the kind of roommate, I would come home, the furniture would be rearranged regularly. It was something I don't do. He cut flowers. We had fresh flowers in the house. He's an excellent cook. We had great dinners. Wine connoisseurs, so we always had nice wines with dinner. And he was just a great roommate. We also had a lot of the same friends from Omni, because Omni, we were all about the same age. We worked really hard. We played really hard. And so a lot of times they would all end up over at our house, our little tiny duplex. And we would just hang out there, eat good food, and have a good time, talk about things happened at work, talk about things we wanted to do. Just enjoy each other's company. So there was never a shortage of friends in our house, and it was nice because we all knew one another work-wise, and then we also had that personal relationship. Mark and Sally started dating, and I can't remember it's before or after he moved in with me. But I said, now as looking back, I don't ever remember thinking them as dating. They just always seemed to be Mark and Sally. And you didn't say one name without saying the other. And it didn't seem like there was a time when there was a getting to know you period. It was as though they'd always been part of one another's lives. And I got to share in that too, because they were a big part of, he was still living with me, so we got to spend a lot of time together. And then I lost my great roommate to Sally, so I had to turn him over, but it was to a great woman and someone I admired. So I said at the end, I'll just miss Mark and his bigger-than-life personality and his huge smile. I know we all will. My heart goes out to Sally, the kids, all the families. And I said, I can only utter the words that comforted me so much when I lost my brother several years back. And they said, we may say we lost Mark, but we didn't. We know where he is. We're the ones that will feel lost for a while, but we too will find our way.
Thanks. And now for the hard part. Kids, any of you like to say something? Matthew? Okay. Any of the kids? Come on.
I remember when they first met me, I was in the treatment center in Lynchburg. I remember my mom, Sally Grant Divenuti, she had a convertible. My dad had one, blue and red. I remember I had speech problems. I used to call them transformers. And I still call them that. It was really cool. And I remember when I first came home, I sat in his lap. He taught me. He was my dad. Yep. We used to watch, what was it called, Mommy? Bullwinkle and Rocky? Yeah. Looney Tunes. I taught him the new stuff. He used to call it the new school, and he taught me old school. I remember when I left because my behavior, but they never forgot me. I remember after a couple years later, they came back and say, you know what? We're not a family without Austin. Everybody agreed in the family. I was meant to be, because by now, if I wasn't with them, I'll be in a group home for the rest of my life. And I'm thankful for having a father. I know I didn't have him for years like my sisters and brothers, but I'm proud I got a chance to say thank you.
Well, anyone else from the family? Okay. Other friends? I don't want to stand up here and tap dance. This is not an altar call. Please, come. John?
I don't have prepared words, so if I'm rambling, stand up, I'll know it's time. That's a tough act to follow. Wow. My name's John Lipsey. My wife and kids and I moved to Port Norfolk 18 years ago. We moved into a house on Mount Vernon, and we moved across from the Pink House. And not everybody knows Mark, but everybody knows the Pink House. So we've become friends with them over the years. I have no clue about his work, so I can't touch on all that, although I know he switched jobs quite a bit. That was pretty much the extent of it. But we've watched him. We've become friends. We've watched his family. We've watched them grow. Our family's grown. Mark was very passionate. Everybody knows that. About his work, obviously, but we know about his family. And we know he was passionate about Port Norfolk, and he was passionate about Portsmouth. We're going to miss Mark. We know life goes on. It's too soon, but we're going to remember Mark, and we're going to keep on. And Port Norfolk is going to miss Mark. He was very involved in our neighborhood, and he was very involved in Portsmouth with school board, with various boards, with everything he did. Port Norfolk is going to miss him, and God knows Portsmouth is going to miss him, because Portsmouth needs people like Mark. So thank you guys, and we thank Mark for his time that he spent with us. Thank you.
Who else would like to say a few words, please?
I just wanted to say that Mark was not my father as much as he was a great uncle. And he taught me what it was to be a man, to stand up for what you believe in and to be passionate and to dress well, just every day. Even in his relaxed clothes, he still looks sharp as tack. And I learned that from him going to job interviews at fast food places. I was in full suit just because that's what Uncle Mark would want me to wear. And he helped shape me into the man I am today, because, like a lot of you said, he's not only stubborn, but he just was passionate about what he fought for, and he believed in it. And God knows he loves Sally, and that's something to stand for. I asked I never knew why the house was pink, and I asked, and they just go, Sally wanted it pink, so we painted it pink. And I don't know very many men who would live in a pink house just because they love their wife. So that was my version of Uncle Mark. Is if there was a man, that was him. He was just a great person.
Thanks. Who else would like to say a few words?
Looking out I'm going to cry, so just be used to it. Looking out of these folks assembled here, I look at Mark's in my life. Whether it was working at the hotel, whether it was working at the Civic League, working with Portsmouth, he loved each and every one of the things he did. That's not to say we all didn't get the skinny eye once or twice, but he loved the city. He always wanted to think of ways to improve it and try and make it more cohesive and a place to be proud of, to be from. From hotels, we've all had hotel stories we can talk about. And Barbie, I heard you're back there. Honey, you probably had the best stories to tell. And thank you for not sharing. He loved what he did. He was a man that loved the hotel industry. He loved his family. He loved each and every one of you. Most families are built by blood. Ours was not. Our family was built by choice. And we were so fortunate that Mark and I saw eye to eye on the children and how they were raised, and that they were just great kids, each and every one of you. And I'm very proud of all of you, and your daddy is too. Looking out over, truly, at the people assembled here represent our lives. From our first princess sitting over here, she chose to sit. Our niece Kathy, she came to live with us for a while along with her brother, Walter. Of course, she and Angel have a rivalry, which is the first princess, but I think Kathy has bragging rights on that. Looking back and seeing just all of you here and knowing that Mark meant that much to you all, that you would take time off to come and help celebrate his life. He was taken too soon. Some people have talked about his sense of humor. I fell in love with that sense of humor. It was wicked. It was. And sometimes not very nice, but it was always funny. And he could always stop and make you laugh, no matter what the situation. We've had our ups and downs and our ins and outs like every marriage of 32 years, but I'll tell you, I wouldn't trade a one of them. I wish he had been able to stick around a little bit longer. We've been planning, those of you that know us, and Andy mentioned it briefly, we were all waiting for retirement. Yeah. Of course, our parents said, be careful what you wish for, you wish your life away. But we planned on being able to move back to South Carolina, hopefully close to Charleston, that we love so dearly. And we weren't able to do that. But I know that wherever Mark is, he's there, but he's going to be with us every day in spirit. And that one day we will be able to make that trip together. Thank you all for coming. And I would like to invite you back to our house for a little repast. It's the Pink House. Can't miss it. Actually, like the pink here. This bouquet was put together. The 2 red roses are Mark and myself. The 6 yellow roses are the children. And the 32 pink roses are our marriage. So I'd like to be able to share some of that with you at our home. And I hope that you'll come and enjoy and visit with us. And thank you. I know several of you. Jack Berry, I see sitting back there. And Kim, I see all of y'all have driven so long to be here, and it means a lot to us. And it meant a lot to Mark. In closing, I'll just share this one story. And Kathy Grieve, you'll know this because we had this laugh that last day. That Mark knew time was of limited duration. And we started talking about what arrangements we might want to do. And he said, well, we want to do a memorial service and, have everybody come back. I said, hell with that. Have the party before you go. Be there to hear all the good stuff and enjoy the stories and have a drink with people. And that's actually what we had planned to do, but it was deemed otherwise. So we're going to go back. We're going to raise a cup or two. We're going to have fun. We're going to talk about Mark and know that he'll be with us in every part of the evening today. Thank you all.
On behalf of Sally and the family, thanks to each and every one of you for coming. The only part of this that Mark would insist on is going to happen now at 218 Mount Vernon Avenue in Portsmouth. For those of you who might not be from the area, I'd be happy to give you directions to the best that I can. But to each of you, we're all very, very sorry for Mark's passing. We're richer to have known him, and, well, we'll see you at the house. Thanks, everybody.
All right. The best thing I know about Mark is when I came to Norfolk in 1981, I needed a job. So I went to the Omni Hotel thinking that I need something over there. So I met with Mark, and I never worked. I don't know anything about hotels. I don't know anything about. So I sat with Mark, and he said, Jacques, well, what do you know to do? I said, I don't know, but whatever you want me to do, I'll do it. He said, well, can you tell me you worked anywhere? I said, no, I never worked. I'm just moved to the area. I need something. He said, well, do you know how to use a knife? I said, yes. He said, okay, do you know, I need you to dress this way if I hired you. And then he said, all I need you to do is, no, I said, I wanted to get a job so bad and I wanted to work. I said, well, I work for you for 2 weeks free. If you don't like me, well, I'll leave. He said, no, we can't let you work for free. We'll try you out. Well, so I was an buffet attendant in the lobby in the Galleria.
Right.
Where I used to cut the sandwiches and get the shrimp also for the people. So they hired me, and I was there for at least 10 years in that hotel. But we used to do a lot of dinners at Bill and Jim's house. I don't know if you know. And
God bless their souls.
yeah, and God bless their soul. Now I found out that they both. I didn't know. So in the end of the day, we used to go over there, and sometimes he loves this kind of house. And it's amazing how you end up in this house. Because again, the Bill and Jim's house was very historical. Very, very. So we used to go sit outside and have little drinks or what have you. So sometimes in 4th of July, they had like firecrackers went out and everybody went crazy, went under the house, and they thought the house was going to get burned and everybody was jumping up and down. But he was funny. When he gets upset with somebody, man, he would tell them. But when he liked somebody, he was there. He used to make the best, in the crock pot, he used to make those sausage.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
And we used to, I love that kind of food. So this is Mark for me. For 10 years, he was always looking at where I'm going to go, because I went from a little buffet attendant to a busboy to a server, and then I went upstairs with him to the catering, and then he sent me out to Atlanta to the Omni Hotels, and that's where I moved to Atlanta because of Omni moved me over there for catering. But we always kept in touch. Every time we came here, we saw him or what have you. So Mark was a wonderful guy. We had a lot of fun time.
All right, this happened today, and I think it was sent to me by Mark especially, because when Mark was my roommate, and Wayne, who was also from Boston, was here too at the Omni, Mark and I had to take Wayne to the emergency room one night. And we were sitting in a cafeteria, waiting for Wayne to come out, and there was a meeting room there, and the meeting had ended. Everyone that walked out was coming through this threshold facing us. And every single person that walked out of the meeting room tripped over the threshold, which sent Mark especially, and myself too, into hysterics. It was not the first one or second one maybe, but the third, fourth, fifth, everyone that came after that, and they would all stop and turn around and look at it, what they had just tripped over, after the person in front of them had just tripped over it. So today I happened to be at Sentara Hospital, and don't you know, someone came out of a meeting room and actually right in front of me tripped, turned around, looked at the threshold, and I thought, Mark, you sent that to me just especially today so I could get a good laugh. And I will definitely miss him. We'll take care of Sally for him, and he'll always be in my thoughts.
I can remember when I met Mark is when I moved here. I moved here in 91. I met him soon after that. Got very involved in Toady thanks to him. All I know is every single time, I'm going to start crying. Every single time I ever saw his beautiful face, he was nothing less than loving and kind and hugging and sweet. Always made me feel very welcome. Always was full of energy, and was a true asset to not only the community but everybody that knew him. Sally, it's been a delight getting to know you through Mark. You're lovely, and to see your children today was especially special. But anyway, much love to all of you. Much love to Mark. And he was always, always so kind and loving and exude what every person should be. So it was a great day and a beautiful service. And your home is lovely and so reflective of you and Mark. Take care.
Sally, hi. Funny stories or kind words about Mark. I guess it has to be kind words about how much I admire how you and Mark put together your family, knowing how you reached out and taken care of your kids and brought kids into your family is kind of a remarkable thing to do for kids in the community, and being so willing and open and receptive and able to put together such a remarkable family is certainly not ordinary. It's absolutely extraordinary, and something that you should always be proud of, and something that we always admire.
So there's really too many stories to tell about Mark and I, but the one thing Mark and I always had was a competition for the loudest laugh. And when we worked together, his office at one point was behind the front desk. And I remember I was out in the lobby laughing with somebody, and he calls from his office, and he sends out to the bar, and he's like, "Tell Mel to shut up. I can hear her in my office." So he and I would laugh till we would cry. You know, he had that personality, you know, we would just go off on each other, and I mean, so many good times and so many good stories, but I loved him. He was a life force, not to be contended with. I am dying to see if Sally has a picture of his white Cadillac. Didn't he have a white Cadillac with red leather interior when he was in Charleston? I think he did. I think he had a Cadillac convertible, big like Guido in the Cadillac convertible. So I'm dying to see if she has a picture of that. But he was amazing, and we will all miss him incredibly.
Hi, Sally. I just wanted to let you know how we feel about Mark and everything. I remember a time when during football season when we were coaching your kids and everything, and I remember missing my anniversary. And the following year, y'all kind of made sure I didn't miss my anniversary. So I remember dropping the kids off here, and then Mark asking us what we're going to do and everything for our anniversary, and I didn't have a clue. So he called up the hotel and had this nice dinner and everything for us and everything. It turned out to be one of the best anniversaries we had.
Yeah. And I still remember that 7-layer chocolate cake.
Mm-hmm. So,
yeah.
So thank you for letting us be a part of his life.
And I remember sitting in those two chairs, and we were talking about the children. And the love that you two have for these children, it's remarkable. I pray that every kid has the love that you two give to your children. And the joy that y'all brought into our lives as parents, and watching how you worked with your kids, that just excited me as a parent in raising my kids. Thank you both for that.